13.5 covers our last concept in trig, and this is also a review from geometry. So the law of cosines is again something we can use for non-right triangles. It's another tool, and it's a tool that we use when law of sines doesn't work, because law of cosines is a bit more complicated when it comes to calculations and number of items. Our main thing is that we use the law of cosines when we have the following. When we have that side angle side situation, and when we have side side side. Because if we have side 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 or side angle side, we often are not going to have the right information or enough information to use law of sines. When we're solving triangles, you really only have to use law of cosines one time, then you can switch over to law of sines. So how does this thing work? Well, in any triangle, the angle and its side opposite are where you are going to start. So if I start with the side a squared, I end with the cosine of a, and then the other two sides fall in to this formula. Now, a couple of areas where kids get messed up, have to pay attention to that negative sign. Sometimes the cosine of a is going to be negative, and you'll have a negative and a negative, which will turn that to positive. So you need to really watch your signs. The other mistake area is you really need to be careful about order of operations. You need to add those two, and you need to multiply those four to BC and the cosine value before you can do any addition or subtraction here in the middle. So be very, very careful with your order of operations. So let's look at some examples, because that's the best way to learn this. So I always sketch a picture. Doesn't have to be even close to being accurate. I just need to be able to see what sides and angles are given to me. So this is a solve on the remaining side and two angles. Now if I wanted to set up a law of sines, you can see I don't have enough information. We need 3 of those 4 values. I don't have enough. So that's not going to work for me. So what I am going to do is I am going to start with C and side C, because I have side, angle, side. So I'm going to start with C squared, and that's equal to the other two sides added and squared minus 2 times those two sides times the cosine, again opposite the side I started with, the cosine of 111. Now, order of operations, these two and this have to happen in those orders. So when you work your orders of operations here, we end up with 1053, 18 squared plus 27 squared, minus, when you multiply those 3 together, you get 972 times the cosine of 111. Now if you think about it, the cosine of 111 is in quadrant 2, which means the cosine is going to be negative. So I have c squared is equal to 1053 minus, when I multiply 972 times the cosine 11, I get negative 348.33. Minus a minus is plus, and so c squared is equal to 1401.33. Take the square root of both sides, and c is 37.4. Now, just like when we were doing law of sine problems, it's important to at least show your equation for the remaining steps, just in case you made a mistake. Partial credit can be awarded. So if I clean up my triangle over here, I had 1, 1, 1 for C, B, A, 18, 27. I now know this side is 37.4, so now I can go ahead and use a law of sines situation with those two and either A or B. So I'm just going to go ahead and use A. So I'm going to say the sine of A over 27 is equal to the sine of 111 over 37.4. Cross multiply. Divide both sides by the 37.4. And if you take the sine of that, you are going to get something in the vicinity. Sine A is 0.6739-ish. Take the inverse, and A ends up being about 42.3 degrees. Now at this point, you have that choice to make again. You could quick set up a law of sines problem for B, or you could subtract from 180. I'm going to go with, just for practice, a quick sine of B problem, because I have that nice simple way to check if my answers are close, because 42.3 and 111 and whatever B ends up being better be close to 180. So when I cross multiply and divide here, I end up with the sine of B being about 0.4493, and when I take the inverse, B is about 26.7, and indeed when I add those together, I'm at 180, so I know I did it right. Now this is a situation that I'm going to have to use the law of cosines with side, side, side. So again, I'm going to sketch my triangle, because otherwise it's very confusing what sides are actually corresponding to what angles. And if you set that up wrong, your angles are not going to be appropriate, and they're going to be wrong on the test or the quiz. So a quick sketch saves you a lot of heartache. Now, you are free to start anywhere you want with a problem like this. I'm going to go ahead and start with A. So those are my bookends. So I need to start with 5 squared. That is equal to these two guys, because this is going to be my side angle side situation. So 5 squared is equal to 8 squared plus 7 squared minus 2 times 8 times 7 times the cosine of the angle I don't know. Again, order of operations says I have to do things in that order. We're also going to have some solving, because this is my unknown. So I have 25 is equal to 113 minus 112 cosine of A. Now at this point, you need to think about this like a variable. So how would I isolate that variable? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 113 from both sides. And so I end up with negative 88 is equal to negative 112 cosine of A. Be really careful right there that you hold on to that negative. How do I undo multiplication? I divide. And so I end up with 0.7857 is equal to the cosine of A. Again, you'll know you're wrong if that cosine value is greater than 1. It cannot be. It can never be. Go ahead and take the inverse of that, and I end up with A being 38.2. Once I know that A is 38.2, I have enough information to switch over to the law of sines to keep working my problem. So then I can say any angle I want. I'm going to go ahead and go to B, and I'm going to say the sine of the angle I just found, 38.2, compared to its side is equal to the sine of B compared to its side, which is 8. When you cross multiply and divide, you end up with the sine of b being 0.989. Again, less than 1. I know I'm good. Inverse b is 81.7. Now you can go ahead and subtract to find c, or you can set up a law of sines problem. Either way, if you say angle C is equal to 180 minus 81.7 minus 38.2, you get 60.1. Or if you say the sine of C over 7 is equal to the sine of 38.2 over 5, you end up with the sine of C being equal to 0.658, and the inverse of that value is 60. And so with our different rounding errors, you can see that you end up in essentially the same place. Always show at least the equations with the appropriate numbers plugged in for partial credit. Be careful, do things in steps, and follow your formulas.